Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's guest speaker presentation. We're very pleased to have Lori Gullason with us today. Most of you know Lori as our CanScribe tech support and operations administrator, but did you know she graduated with high honors from our medical transcription program in 2011? Everyone's path after graduation is unique, and Lori is certainly no exception to that. She is here today to share her experience. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, thanks Lori for having me today. I'm really excited.
Oh, awesome. I will also let the students know if they have questions as we go along. Please feel free to type them in the chat box, and um, either Lori or I could read them out and answer them as we go along. And we'll also have a chance to ask questions at the end as well. So we'll get started, Lori. There's a question I like to ask all of my guest speakers who have taken our program, is just to ask you what led you to take the MTHDS program.
So like Lori said, I did start my program back in 2010. It was shortly after my third child was born, and me and my husband just started realizing that any of the money that I was making was really just going to pay our daycare costs, and that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. But at the same time, we knew that we couldn't afford for me to just stay home and not be bringing in any income. I had worked entry-level jobs up to that point, and although I was smart and I could learn new skills easily, I really didn't have any marketable skills. I didn't have any certificates or anything behind my name to prove that I could be a marketable and valued employee. A friend of mine had recently taken the MT program, and she encouraged me to look into it. I was really attracted by the idea of setting my own hours and being home to throw that frozen casserole in the oven or the laundry in, all those things that we think we need to do as a stay-at-home mom. I researched every aspect of the program that I could. I looked into what it was to be a medical transcriptionist, all of the different problems that might be seen to be working from home, all the different options that were available to me at the time for working at home. And I even went so far, once I decided I was going to do the transcription, I even went so far as to reach out to, I think it was Acuity at the time, and ask their hiring manager, which company, which school are you hiring graduates from? And the answer was unequivocally CanScribe. He really just gave me the one word, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
So right away, I enrolled in the program, again, started in 2010, I think, December of 2010, and graduated in 2011 with high honors.
Awesome. Before I get to the next question, Laura, I just want to ask, I thought I had shared my screen. Are you guys able to see my screen?
I can.
You can? Okay.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I just had a moment. Okay, sorry about that, Lori.
No problem.
So something that a lot of students worry about is feeling like maybe they're not ready for the workforce. I'm just curious, how did you find the transition from school to the workforce?
Like you said earlier, everybody's journey on this is absolutely different. For me, I didn't technically transition into the medical transcription workforce right away. While I was doing my program, our family ended up moving to a new community where I didn't know a whole lot of people. I basically buried myself in my basement and focused on finishing my program so that I could be a contributing member to my family for almost a year when we moved to the new community. In the meantime, my family was all settling in and making their friends and building their social connections, and I wasn't. So right about the time I finished my final exam, I ended up getting a job offer at the mine in Princeton. And the hours, the pay, everything just worked out so much better for my family. And I was kind of upset at the time. Like, I had just put all this time and effort and everything I had literally into my medical transcription program when I wasn't going to use it. So I took the job mostly just to get out of the house because I was missing that socialization, both socially and productively too. I like that collaboration. It wasn't until a few years later that I decided I became a single mom, and I decided to start doing the transcription kind of as a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And that transition was a challenge. For me, it was a side hustle, something to do in my spare time, save up a little extra money when I could. But for my employer and Modal, I was a valued employee who was expected to be producing and contributing to their company productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on it, working with an employer with a, you know, more structured schedules, or um, just being a little more open, or when I was looking into employers, probably would have been a better idea for me. I also really struggled with the remote nature of the role, and I still do, even working with CanScribe. It's hard to get to know the people you're working with really on a personal level, which does help in that collaboration efforts too when you're working on projects together with people you've never met.
Yeah.
So working with a different employer would have been a really good idea. Um, I found that it had been a few years since I'd taken my course, so I knew I was going to have a little bit of catching up to do. So our QA was always looking at my reports, but sometimes it would be a week or so later, and I would get a feedback note that I had done something wrong. But it was really similar to warp that you guys are seeing now, where your instructor just makes a comment and you really don't have an access right then and there to answer them. And so it would be a week or so later, I'd have to take the time to figure out and email the instructor or the QA advisor. And I just, I found I got a lot of don'ts and not very many do's. And I personally had a bit of a hard time with that one. So there were some challenges, but at the same time, um, being able to work from home and be comfortable was a lot more comforting.
Yeah. It's interesting because I worked for the same company. I was one of the people who gave the QA feedback. So I wonder if it differed by accounts, perhaps just because for us, you usually got the feedback within hours of having submitted the report. But I do agree we were only really allowed to make the correction and not give a lot of feedback. And
Well,
I,
yeah, and as a transcriptionist too, you would have been a superior, so really questioning you when it had been so long for me to be out of the game, it was, I didn't want to seem insubordinate or argumentative at all, right?
Mhm.
Because the QA advisors are your superiors. But
Did
if
you
you,
have a way to contact QA? Because I know with my accounts, there wasn't a way to contact them. You'd have to contact your manager.
I believe I was able to contact them through email.
Okay,
Um,
that's cool.
but again, it was spending a lot of unpaid time to research and figure out who it was that had graded that one, and
Uh,
that wasn't really worth it to me, especially considering it was just a side hustle. how
yeah.
much how much interest did I really want to put into this? If I was going to be working on it, I wanted to be getting that payback.
So, so you had been a gap between graduation and then starting to transcribe. And then how long do you feel it took you to kind of get into the groove and not have as much negative feedback and feel like comfortable at that point?
So I had about a 3 to 4 year gap, so
Oh,
I was
wow.
actually really quite surprised that I was hired, um, which tells you a lot about what the industry was at the time. um, I think it took me probably about 2 months, 2 to 3 months to really get in the groove. I remembered things. I had all my resources still from my program,
Mhm.
but just remembering, and I was still using all the skills that I had developed in the program, just not in a medical format.
Yeah. You were talking about having it like it being a bit of an adjustment when you're working from home and not seeing people face to face. And I completely understand that because when I started, I was in a new town and didn't know a soul. So I really didn't see people very much. How did you have any ways that you found were helpful to deal with that? Coping mechanisms or?
Um, just making the effort to reach out to the people that you're working with, whether it's
Mhm.
on Teams or, and sending them the silly little memes, like I know it's a bit unprofessional, but it doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
to send a little meme of shaking a hand or even just a sloth waking up in the morning and pouring his coffee.
Hmm.
It's something that brings a little bit of joy and shows a little bit of your personality. And so then when it comes to uh, the struggles or collaborating with a project or anything, it's a lot easier to kind of understand who the people are that you're working with and that they are friendly people on the other side of the screen. They might be
Yeah.
sitting 8 hours away from you, but they are still humans and still people, and um, you can get to know their personalities,
Yeah.
and it helps a lot.
Especially, I find text is often misread. Tone and stuff is hard to express in a just straight
Absolutely.
text. But
Yeah.
yeah. So speaking of your time as a student at CanScribe, if you could go back and, speak to yourself, give yourself a little pep talk, what might you say to yourself?
I would definitely say keep an open mind because you don't know everything, especially when you take the course, maybe as a younger person too, young adult. Back then, I would join the weekly QAs, and we're talking 15 years ago. So those QAs were not like we have now with Teams. You were typing your questions in. It was literally just almost a
We were,
Facebook group
yes,
chat.
typing back and forth. Yes, I
Yeah, we
remember it.
were.
Yeah.
And I would see the questions come in and I'd answer them in my head, and I knew all the answers before the instructors could type them out. I knew what was going on. I knew I had a plan set forth for myself. I can do this. I can be a QA editor. I maybe one day I'll be a CanScribe instructor. You know, little did I know life was going to take me in a totally different direction than that. But we set our goals and you aim for them and you be open to whatever life is going to bring at you. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing is that I was still young enough too that I didn't realize that that old saying, use it or lose it, is actually true.
Mm-hmm.
All those things I learned, I lost the ones that I didn't use. And like I said, in my path, that medical language is the stuff that I didn't use all the time. So that was probably one of the biggest parts I had struggle with when I did go back to transcription.
Okay. Um, how did you find that? Like, did it take you long to get the researching and get that back into that once you started again?
I didn't think so, but when there was 3 or 4 years in between, a lot had changed with medication names
Hmm.
and things like that. And I remember struggling with a report. I was trying to find the medication that matched what was going on in the rest of the report, and I couldn't find it for the life of me. I think I worked for about half an hour Googling different spellings of what I was hearing. And my 8-year-old daughter walked in at the time, and she said she could see I was stressed out. So I played her just that one little clip of the dictation. And within 30 seconds, she pulled up the correct medication on her phone that I had been looking for about half an hour. I was so
Oh.
upset. But yeah, sometimes you have to learn things from the people younger than us too. So she
Yes.
taught me a few skills of how to use the search functions a little bit better than what I was using. So
Yeah, and tech has really changed since, the time, like, because I graduated 14 years ago. So the tech has really changed since then. Now you sometimes people will play a little snippet to the Google, like what is it? You call it where it listens to what you're saying and gives it to you in text. So sometimes that can help. Like there's a lot of different things that are available now that weren't back then. Although, of
yeah,
course, you have to be careful about confidentiality and what you're playing out loud and not over your headset. But
absolutely.
I will say this though, with a half an hour of looking for a blank, I for the students, just leave a blank. just wait to get it back and see what's filled in, because when you're paid by production, like that's a long time to search. But
Yeah.
um sometimes and I can be guilty of it too, you're dying to know what it is and you just stick at it. But just, be aware in the workforce if something like that happens, you can leave a blank and just wait to get it back and just take note. But
I do
um
believe leaving blanks was one of those things I forgot in the meantime
yeah.
because,
Well, and
but
sometimes with medications, doctors don't pronounce them properly because maybe it's a specialist and the family doctor's given a lot of medications the specialist wouldn't normally be familiar with, so they really mispronounce the the word, and that makes it even more challenging to try to
yeah,
find the medication. So, okay, well, how have your transcription skills then contributed to what you're doing now, since you have been through a lot of changes through the years?
it, there are so many ways. Like, my typing skills, I don't think that's a fair answer. That one's just kind of obvious. Computer skills, well, I am in tech support now, so
Hmm.
the stuff that I learned in my CanScribe program, all of those Windows programs and how to use Word and Excel, all of that stuff really laid a solid foundation for it for all the careers I've held. There's always something new to learn, a new platform, an updated filing system. All of my basic skills came from my transcription program. Um, the other thing it really taught me, though, is that I'm capable of learning things on my own. It gave me the confidence to ask the questions that I really didn't understand, um, and just to take the time to do that research myself and
Hmm.
to try and fill in the blanks of whatever was the next step that I needed. I know this can happen. I know I can do this. I'm just not exactly sure how. So using those research skills was good. The biggest surprise to me, though, like I said, I kind of thought I had wasted all of my tuition money and the last
Hmm.
year when I went to work at the mine. But those dictation and transcription skills were actually pretty strong in making me a valued employee, even outside of the medical industry. As a student, I developed an ear that allows me to attend a meeting and have the minutes or meeting notes sent out to everybody that was there within, sometimes even before the meeting is over. My notes are done and they are sent and emailed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I can have a phone call with a client and be adding the summary of our conversation with some of those familiar names I see in our attendance today. While I'm talking to you, I'm typing our notes up into your system so that Lori and our instructors know what we've talked about too. So all of that is super important, and it's going to be something that all of you are going to be using in the workforce, no matter what
Hmm.
sector you end up using. A few months ago, I was working as a temporary receptionist for a commercial property manager. I attended a pretty important meeting with city officials and angry commercial tenants that I had never met
Hmm.
before. And it was on, I think, day 2 of working with this company. The meeting took over an hour, and I had my back to every single attendee in that meeting. But within a half an hour of that meeting finishing, I had a full transcript. You know, we're talking like movie script type style
Wow.
transcript of every word that was said in that meeting. It took me about a half an hour to format it and get it in front of my bosses, but a long, drawn out meeting that you really have no idea what's going on or who you're talking to be able to just zone out of what's really being said and really just kind of let it flow from your ears through your fingers.
Hmm.
It's a huge skill in today's day and age.
Yeah.
So since becoming an MT, I have used my skills in an endless number of ways. Like I said, I was in mining for 11 years. Um, and from there, I moved to Kelowna and was working for a countertop production fabricator.
Hmm.
From there, with them, I ended up being the leader of their safety department, and that was a big deal, another huge learning curve to manage. But I was successful with them for another 3 years. Since then, like I said, I've worked with commercial property managers and have even had opportunities to work with the RCMP. I've served on nonprofit organizations from kids' sports to service organizations. And now I'm here. I'm with all of those skills and no extra training other than my transcription program. I'm here now supporting our CanScribe students and staff as your tech support and operations administrator. I honestly don't think I could have done any of it without my MT program.
It does teach you a lot about organization, time management, all of that stuff too. That's so important that I know for sure has, helped me over the years because I
Yeah,
know being an instructor is really busy and takes a lot of organization. So yeah, you've really gone full circle as well. So we both started with CanScribe and ended up with CanScribe at the end
yeah.
too. So it's kind of funny. Um, do you have any tips for success as an MT?
Um, we start by just paying attention to the training that's offered to you when you're hired with a new company. They usually give you a couple hours of kind of introductory training, show you what their platform is and how to use it. Um, Pay attention to it. See what all of the different options are available to you. You will likely have access to doctor reports, so previous reports from the doctor that you're transcribing for.
Mhm.
You'll have patient records, but you're also going to have built-in templates. You know, some doctors will say, I remember I had one report. It was a 3-second report, and I thought it was going to be an error. But the doctor said LASIK left and a couple of numbers. I don't remember what they were.
Mhm.
I spent, again, way too much time trying to figure out what these 3 words meant together. And I finally stumbled on some templates that the doctor had set up. And by the time I looked at his previous dictations and compared them to each other, to find out that they were all identical except for those 3 words. The
Mhm.
side of the face, which surgery it was, and what their current vision status was. Once I figured that out, I found his templates, plugged in those 3 words in the flagged spots for them, and right away I had, I think, 30 or 40 lines. And after that, I loved getting those tiny itty bitty little reports because sometimes they could expand out pretty good if you could figure out where to go.
Yeah.
So definitely pay attention to that training, and keep learning as much as you can, right? Just
Yeah.
there's always something new to be developing on, and you never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even just because the medical field keeps growing and changing
Exactly.
too. So always trying to stay up to date on those things if possible. If you are a member of HDI, the different um webinars and articles and stuff that they provide can do that as well. It's funny you talk about like really listening to the things they had in training, and the one thing that you were talking about templates, the one thing I wish I had paid more attention to were the shortcut keys because I could have been a lot faster had I got to know those better. Um, so that was sort of my learn from my mistakes comment is just
Yeah.
try to learn those shortcut keys to speed you up. Um, and also, I was given a manual and it scared me to death. But I think if I'd spent a bit more time just even flipping through it a little bit to just peruse, I would have picked up some more things that, again, would have sped me up and made me more efficient. So I'm with you on that. Like, really take advantage of that training day or days. I know I had 2
Yeah.
full days. Um, and then have that manual handy or look at it, if you're watching TV at night and instead of looking at your phone, you're flipping through the manual a little bit and just any of
Well,
that time to speed up down the road.
and that's what that training is. It's not training you to be a transcriptionist. You've already done that. You've
Yeah.
already proven to them that you can do that.
Yeah.
By the time you get there, and I think that was my problem. I had it in my head that they were going to be training me how to do the job, and I thought, no, I know how to do this. I
Yeah.
really, and I went in with that kind of block in the front of my head, and so actually paying attention and seeing how their software worked,
Yeah.
and which fields I was supposed to be comparing to for patient information, I was lost. And it
Aw.
probably didn't help either that I was looking at it on a little laptop screen instead of having a proper monitor where I could
Mhm.
see it a little bit bigger. That
Yeah, some of
probably would
those
have
little
helped too.
boxes can be pretty tiny to see sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Aw. Well, we're getting closer to the end of our time. Did you have any final thoughts or advice for the students that are here?
just kind of reiterate a few of the things that we've said. The other thing I would tell my much younger self is the real world is also an open book, just like your CanScribe program. Um, we can give you the skills you need to land and do the job, but we can't train you on that proprietary software and features or the things that have changed since you take your program. So it's an open book. Use those Google search features. Use um, AI in some cases. That's taken
Mhm.
some time to look at that. This world is changing constantly, and there's always new ways. So keep an open mind. And somebody once told me, you don't have to know all the answers. You only need to know where to find them.
Mhm.
And that one has never failed me ever. So
That's true. Thanks, Lori. Did anyone have any questions? Everyone's been fairly quiet as they're listening. Did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask? Okay, well, nobody's typing. So thank you so much for joining us, Lori. I really appreciate your time. And it's kind of nice too for our students to get to know you a little bit when they call in. They'll be a bit more familiar with you, which is always nice too. So
And it was
um
kind of nice too to have the two of us on this one, the two Loris, because we
yes,
do get confused quite often.
yes, we do.
So it's okay, you guys, we're used to it.
Yes. But yeah, thank you again so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your experience. It's always interesting to talk to someone who didn't necessarily do it full time, but they did it on the sides. I do have a lot of students that train specifically for that. It is something they just want to do on the side. So that's really great to hear your experience when a lot of our guest speakers do it full time. So thank you for that. And thank you everybody for joining us today.